Welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast, episode number 181 for December 7th, 2011. I am hosting this episode because Ryan is off somewhere only a few hundred miles from my house, actually, but I'm not going to see him. Anyhow, let's see here. The phone number for you to leave voicemails, which we haven't heard from in very, very long time. Right, Josh?
No
We haven't
papers.
had any. No papers?
No,
Yeah.
no
So
papers.
call us. Talk about
Introductions.
papers at 1-888-38-PC-PER, P-E-R. Or you can email us any kind of questions and we'll answer them on this podcast at podcast@pcper.com. And moving right along, if you want to follow typical updates that we have to PC Perspective, probably the easiest way to do that is you follow Ryan, our editor-in-chief, at twitter.com/Ryan Shrout or twitter.com/PCPer. Now, with all that out of the way, introductions, right? I'm Al Malventano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
And I'm a somewhat forgetful Josh Walrath.
We're all forgetful today. All right, first story up for bid. Hybrid Storage Roundup. This one was all me. But what do you guys have that you want to say right off the bat about this thing before I go into it? Anything?
You know, the promise of the hybrid storage has been long, but the results have been short.
Yep,
Pinus longarius.
definitely so. So, we decided to sort of figure out what the status was on this, right? There have been hybrid pieces, hybrid drives come out. We hadn't really covered it a lot because the things that did come out, they didn't even remotely compete with, any kind of solid state that was out at the time. And we tended to sort of just kind of stayed away from it for a little while there. But more recently, we saw a newer generation of a drive from Seagate. So this is actually the third generation drive. We looked at the second and third in this piece. There's drives, Seagate drives called the Momentus XT, which is second generation being 500 gig drive, third generation being a 750 gig drive. So these are laptop-sized drives, drop-in replacement for a 2.5-inch drive bay on a mobile platform or anywhere else that you might have a 2.5-inch hard drive. We also took a look at some other solutions as well, one of which being the OCZ Revo Drive Hybrid, which is just like a Revo drive, which we've looked at in the past, which is PCI Express, really quick, dual or quad channel SandForce 2200 controllers. But instead, this time they put that on the card and they stuck a 1 terabyte 2.5-inch drive on top of that. And they sort of merged the two together there. And then we compared it with what we had looked at in the past, which was the Intel Z68 series motherboard and Intel Rapid Storage or Rapid Response technology, which is where you just use SSD, any SSD up to 64 gig, and you cache a connected hard drive that's also on that same motherboard. So we took all these things and we sort of wrapped them all up together, put them in a roundup to see, okay, how do these things all compare? Everything was, pretty decent. It all depended on really what you wanted to do with it was the thing. Because you have some solutions that go really, really fast. Like the Revo Drive Hybrid. That thing has dual 6 gigabit serial ATA SandForce controlled solid state drives. Combined, they make 100 gig. So that's one-tenth of a terabyte right there. And it has a terabyte hard drive on it. But what's considerable there is that the cache size is pretty darn big. 100 gig just for the cache. So chances are that your entire operating system and the majority of your games are probably going to be in that cache. So we saw really high performance out of that solution, obviously, for stuff that was in the cache, and it was a bonus that there was a good chance that everything you were using was also going to be in there. The only catch, though, is PCI Express. So you're pretty much locked in. You have to use this on a desktop, no matter what. Unless you want to do that crazy thing we looked at a couple of podcasts ago where, what was it, the guy had a video card plugged into a mobile platform. Remember that?
Yeah, it sort of hacked it together. It wasn't exactly
Yeah.
mobile at that point, but hey, it did pretty good.
Right. It did look pretty good. You wouldn't probably see that kind of performance out of this because I think that solution was only like PCI Express by one lane. So this card would bottleneck that thing in a second. Um, the other things we're looking at though were not as not as high on the performance, but again, just drop in replacements, right? So things like the Seagate drives, really good for you literally just drop it in place of your laptop hard drive and you just forget about it. There's no configuration, there's no kind of setup, there's nothing to configure, even if you wanted to. The thing just goes in place, and the most recent one, the 750 gig model, has a 8 gigabyte cache, which is much improved over the previous model's 4 gig, because 4 gig is almost not enough to even cache the operating system just by itself, or at least majority of the bulk system files and stuff like that. So it's good to see a larger cache, better chance that stuff you're frequently using is going to be in that cache. And that drive also was upgraded to 6 gigabit. Now, obviously, the hard disk itself isn't going to come anywhere near 6 gigabit speeds, but that cache very well could. And we saw some of that in the testing, so that was pretty good for that drive. Now, the Z68 caching, of course, that's getting back to a desktop-style solution for most people, but realize that there are mobile versions of that solution, that chipset. So there are laptops, mobile platforms out there that have 2 bays for solid-state drive and a hard disk drive, and they have an equivalent of that Z68, just a mobile version that you can do that same kind of caching on. So the deal there is if you have the hardware, it's really good, right? Z68 motherboard or the equivalent on mobile, if you already have the thing, you just slap an extra solid-state drive in there. You find like the cheapest 60 gig one or 40 gig one you can find. You connect it. You get pretty darn good performance for what's in that cache, and the Intel software handles that very well. So what it all boiled down to is just that it depends on what you have, but there are hybrid solutions that cover pretty much everything now. And the whole thought process behind them is you're getting much better cost per gig, much closer to a hard disk drive cost per gig, except for sort of the Revo drive because it's a really fire-breathing, really high performance. But again, you're getting what you're paying for there, right? Because that performance is, again, really fast. And we know at least Josh has toyed around with solid state, so the closer you can get to that solid state style performance on your system, the better, right, Josh?
The happier you are.
The happier? He just takes it right to the happy. Okay, cool. Next.
Well, how easy was it to benchmark, though? Because, I mean, one of the problems with these caching drives is if you benchmark it enough, your benchmark is going to suddenly sit in the cache.
Right, and that's actually how we did, like, I sort of counted on that for some of the testing. The bigger pain in the butt was benchmarking stuff and having those benchmarks run for things that are not in the cache. So, for example, for the Revo Drive Hybrid, I ended up installing, I had to do a fresh Windows install on that drive. I was lucky there because you have to specifically install a special driver that turns on that cache. Right, so I was able to basically get Windows, everything, drivers, everything set up, and then turn on the cache basically. And then from that point, I could do a fresh boot, see what boot times looked like with it uncached, and then run through benchmarks. The first time I ran the benchmark, obviously, the first time the cache was seeing that as well. But for the Seagate drives, there's no configuration. There's no way to even talk to the cache at all independently. So I had to just do a bunch of other stuff on the drive to sort of confuse it and trick it into caching the other things that I was doing. So that way, it was if it was seeing Windows for the first time again by the time I did that first reboot. So yeah, there's a lot of tricks to trying to get the benchmarks on this. You have to do OS installs or cloning. You have to, it's not just plug this drive into a testbed system, run some benchmarks on it, call it a day, right? Because we had to have your OS on there at the same time.
But for raw performance, I mean, if you were to put this against a 10,000 RPM drive like WD's Raptors,
right? And we actually had a comment on the article.
Unexpected tasks. Let's call them unexpected tasks.
Yes, things that the system had not seen recently, but random access type thing, a program or a game or something that you haven't ran in a couple of weeks, maybe, and then it's rolled off the cache because the drive sees he's hardly using that. I'm just going to put something more important or more frequently used in its place. So for those performances, all the hard drives are pretty much across the board the same kind of thing. They run just whatever their hard drive speed, right? Actually the drive, it's a Toshiba 1 terabyte drive in the Revo Drive Hybrid, And that's kind of a hefty drive. I think it's actually a three-platter drive because it's like 12 millimeters. It's not 9.5 like a standard laptop hard drive. Um, so with that, you're going to get slower seek times. Sure, the sequential transfer might be a little bit faster, but again, it's sort of like, better in one place but worse in another. So I don't think users are going to worry too much about that specifically for the Revo drive because again, that cache is so large that most of that stuff's going to be in there and just stay there. Um, everything else is, imagine what else are you going to put on your 1 terabyte drive? Well, probably just media, that kind of thing. Things that are just being read sequentially and you're only reading it one time. You play that MP3, it only read it one time. That's hopefully not enough for it to go overwriting the other more frequently used stuff that's in the cache. And even if it is, it's going to get back in there so darn fast the next time it accesses it. You're probably still good. But boot times were a little bit interesting, actually. And here's a little tidbit that's a little bit more information than I even wrote in the piece, is that for the Revo Drive Hybrid and for the Z68 caching, you get an extra prompt during boot because the option ROM for those things has to pop up for the Intel RAID thing, for example. It pops up the little press Control I to enter, your options for your Intel RAID. And then the Revo Drive Hybrid has something that's just hard coded in. There are no options to set, but it still prompts something and it sits on the screen for a few seconds. So for those two, it actually kills a little bit of time, extra time, if you're counting from like when you turned on the PC. The chart I used for the piece, I was specifically going for the speed of the devices itself. So I didn't start the clock until it had already passed that stuff. So if you take that stuff to fact, the Seagate drive was actually one of the better ones, right? And it's convenient because the Seagate drive is also the one that's going to be most likely in a mobile platform, not a desktop platform. So it's just going to, that's where you want the really fast boot anyway. So, you're just better off there. About that Velociraptor thing, not only was that asked in the comments of the article, somebody also sort of went down the road of what if you had a Velociraptor on the hybrid, on the Revo Drive Hybrid, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't work. And the reason I say that is because I'm not sure, I'd have to check, but I don't think the Revo Drive Hybrid passes the plus 12 volt line onto the hard drive port. And if it doesn't do that, that's a little known fact about Velociraptors. They also take plus 12 volts, where a typical laptop 2.5 drive does not take more than the 5 volt line. It'll use 3.3 and it'll use 5. It won't use the extra serial ATA pins to supply 12. Velociraptor does. So that sort of breaks some things. That's what prevents people from trying to shoehorn those into their laptops, actually, despite the extra thickness. So that's that. Any other questions? Guys? Josh?
Guys? Me? No?
You want
no, sure. I'll
Is
take
it
one.
enticing enough? How about that, you two? Is it enticing enough where you would prefer
What's
this
the price
over...
on this monstrosity?
Okay, it all depends on which way you're going here. Yeah, nice. So market prices, the Momentus XT, the newest one, 750 gig, it's $240. That's only 32 cents a gig. Not bad. It's still like $100 surplus over a typical laptop drive of the same size, but $100 extra for something for a situation where you only had one drive bay, that's really your only way out, other than just going pure solid state drive, and then you're paying through the nose for, to have 750 gig worth. That's a lot of money. The Revo Drive Hybrid, that one's much more pricey. That's close to $500 for that drive. Cost per gig, though, since it's a whole terabyte, is only 50 cents a gig. So still not too bad, especially considering it's 1 terabyte. But the other thing to consider is, yeah, it's a lot of money, but again, look at the performance of that thing. It performs pretty much for stuff in the cache is almost identical to a dual channel Revo drive without the hybrid part. Right? It basically just is a Revo drive for what's in that cache. And Revo drives are really dang fast, if you've read any of the previous reviews that we've done. So, good stuff.
Good stuff, Maynard.
Yep. What do we got next here? Asus. Actually, this was Matt Smith's piece. Have either of you gone through it? I know I skimmed through it as well. It was kind of interesting. Matt Smith did a review of the Asus U36 SD TAC XA1 and a partridge in a pear tree. I really wish they'd get these model numbers under control. anymore. Yeah, I know. Gigabyte does that too a lot, right? Um,
I mean, it's not really like an engineer's model anymore where you'd know exactly when it was made and what line it came off of. It's just marketing gobbledygook.
yep. So this
Can't
is
go.
these are one of the things that we've been waiting to come out, right, guys? The opposition to the MacBook Airs.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's sort of an ultrabook, but it's not an ultrabook. When you look at it, it honestly, the hinges, there's a nice little gap between there. It looks kind of cheap. On the other hand, for under $1,000, you've got an i5 2410 and a GeForce GT 520M 1 GB inside of there. So gaming wise, this thing just blows the pants off of the competition.
Mm-hmm. Then I
It
saw
also,
they shoehorned a 8 cell lithium ion battery into that guy,
but yeah,
as thin
and
as it was.
one of the bigger power suckers, hard drives, as you mentioned, some of them even go for the 12-volt lane. But this is a 160 gigabyte SSD in it. Again, under $1,000, but that is your storage is 160 gigabyte SSD.
That's pretty good.
It's rather impressive. They sort of said, okay, we'll skimp on the packaging. One of the biggest problems with the Ultrabook form factor is, hey, it costs a lot to have a nice chic aluminum coating and to make sure that something that thin is still stiff. So you go, a little bit thicker, a little bit wider, throw weight to the wind because, yeah, as you say, an 8 cell lithium ion battery on there. And, still go with chiclet keys. People tend to like that. It's a ASUS, so there's a rocker keypad switch on it, unfortunately. But the amusing thing is that when Matt was running the battery eater tests, he was getting, well, first he had to change the graph. But for the battery eater standards, was pretty much meeting or beating the battery eater readers test for any other of the ones he was doing. The continuous Wi-Fi on, hey, you're just browsing, doing whatever for over 8 hours, just a little bit short of 9. Over 10 was just the readers test, so that you're not using Wi-Fi, you're not using any of the peripherals. And since this is an Optimus notebook, the the NVIDIA card is shut off. So you're just going off of the HD 3000. Over 10 hours, 11 hours. This is, almost tablet territory. It's really nice. Problem being, if you're buying a laptop to show off, it's matte black, so you've got no shiny piano finish on it. It looks a little chunky, and when you open it up, there is a bit of an odd gap. There's no backlighting because of the non-reflective screen. On the other hand, if you're looking at buying something that's, going to serve you pretty well, going to let you game, and isn't going to die after you watch one movie, it's, to me anyways, preferable to an Ultrabook. Anyone else?
It's good stuff. I like the battery.
Under $1,000. Chiclet
part, too.
keyboard.
Yeah.
I'm not a
Blah.
fan of the chiclet keyboards, though.
Ah.
I like those good
Well,
old
Last time I used a
Lenovo
chiclet
almost.
keyboard was the Trash 80.
Oh, you
The
haven't been
Radio
into
Shack
chapters?
PRS 80. Chiclets. What?
Back then, you had to unwrap each one individually from its foil.
I
you haven't
had
been into a
16
chapters lately,
AM
doing Christmas
I
shopping?
did.
Chapters. When you're looking up a book there at one of their kiosks. It's a Mac keyboard buried underneath that kiosk. Bloody chiclets.
Damn that.
Next up, we done with this one, right?
What do you mean?
Are we ready to move on?
Let's move
the
on
next-
to the video
the next one?
perspective.
Yeah. So there was a video perspective. How we want to work this? We want to play it? Do we want to?
How about I
there's enough-
talk about it a little bit and he can show it playing in the background or something like that.
I just like
So-
how I like those completely almost looking unfair comparisons where one thing just walks all over the other one. It's just
Yeah, it's very exciting. Well, as you well know, AMD has a pretty robust integrated graphics unit on their 8 series of processors. Now, this is fairly comparable in price to the Intel i3 2105. So, whatever that sense makes of you in terms of model numbers, just thank Intel marketing and AMD because they both stink.
More on
But at the
that
very
later.
least, AMD is smoking Intel when it comes to integrated graphics performance along many of the latest and greatest high-end games, including Battlefield 3, Call of Duty 3, good Lord, Modern Warfare, and Skyrim, multiple others, and uh, AMD takes Intel out to the woodshed and just smacks it up. Something fierce. We can blame this on Intel. They haven't had as good of a time with integrated graphics, but AMD has. It's a much more robust part. The way they handle memory really helps streaming a little bit more. So again, we get better performance. So AMD came out about 2 times higher in terms of overall speed and performance than what Intel was able to do. Now, this of course was not compared against a i7 2700K, which obviously is going to be faster in both CPU and a little bit faster in the integrated GPU portion, but it's still going to get hammered on pure graphics, even though it'll just absolutely smoke the AMD processor and CPU. So, big grain of salt with all this. The settings
Well,
are
that's
not.
unfair, Josh. You should compare it to the i7. 'Cause
I
you know the
should.
i7 is the
That's
top of the line part from
it is the top
those
end
other
part
guys.
for Intel with their graphics. So you
Yeah.
need to compare that 110, $115, AMD part to a $350 i7 2700K, because that's really fair.
and here's the funny thing. Even if they did, I'm pretty sure they're not going to get double out of it.
No.
Oh, you run
'Cause
that as
that's what it would
as a
take.
frame per dollar?
But
Or a
one
frame
guy
per
was
second
able to
per dollar?
overclock the Intel integrated graphics to 1700 megahertz, and it worked absolutely fine against the AMD part.
Smoke was coming out of it.
Anyway, so yes, AMD makes a pretty good integrated part, and for those people who are looking for just basic performance, they still have a quad-core CPU, but it's going to have really good integrated graphics. You could do some serious gaming on it. It's not going to be fantastic. You're not going to get into the high resolution and high details as a standalone card, but in everything pretty modern, it's going to be able to do pretty well, and it's going to be able to run it all, which is a big plus over what Intel currently offers. So
Yes,
there
they
you go.
They definitely have some catching up to do, that's for sure. All right, so before we move on, we're going to take a brief, short intermission for a product announcement. No, it's not an announcement. Advertisement from our buddies at MSI. All right, thanks to MSI for that. Next up, Steve Griever took a look at the ASRock Z68 Extreme 7 Gen 3 motherboard, which is LGA 1155. Thank God that's not part of the part number, or is it? These things are going to be a paragraph one day. It's just going to be like a bunch of check boxes or something. So this motherboard looks pretty darn good. It's just like the thing's loaded with features. What is it, like 5 PCI Express 3.0 ports? I didn't even know these guys were making motherboards. The last thing I saw, I have like an ASRock little media center PC thing from them from a couple of years back, but
Oh no, they've been solid in the business for quite a while.
my goodness.
Steve even compares this, I think, against an H67 that they put out from ASRock.
The thing looks good. 7.1 channel audio, just a bunch of PCI Express.
And an Enforce 200.
Yeah, Enforce 200 on board. Wow, that's just where did they put all that stuff?
Under the
Underneath
heat
those
sinks.
snazzy heat
Under the
sinks.
big snazzy
Yeah.
heat sinks. Yeah, yeah. Good point. It's all hiding. There's like 10 serial ATA ports on it just by looking, and that's not counting eSATA. Yeah, it's got a lot of stuff. Like a lot. And it's a good overclocker
And
from
as
Steve's
you can
report.
tell by looking behind Alan, he likes a lot of stuff.
It's
And
true.
I like a lot of stuff
Josh
as
just wanted
well.
to. Oh, okay, good. I'm glad he caveated that one there.
And I
Yes.
like to hang my bed sheets behind me so that no one can see my stuff.
But at least they're
Yes.
clean bed sheets and not stained. Because
Hey, black
interesting
is good.
stains would show up on black. We're not
It's
going
not a
there.
UV camera.
This is going south fast. All right,
But
next up.
Just think
Asus.
Ryan does this almost every week.
yeah.
I know, right? Yeah, this is crazy. Next up, who stuck this in there because we don't have a link for
That
it?
would be me. I'm about ready to pull the trigger
Release
on
something?
my Asus GeForce Direct CU2 series of reviews. Now I've gotten the GTX 580, GTX 570, and the GTX 560 Ti. All of these feature the Direct CU2 cooling. That is quite the popular and quite the rage these days. They are aiming this directly at MSI and their Twin Frozer series. So we're going to take a look and see how well these do against those particular products from MSI. And there are some interesting results, to say the least. And we'll go into that in much more detail this coming week.
Sweet. Next up, well, I guess this one's all me, right? Intel and Micron, or what I usually refer to as IMFT, because that's the name of their joint venture, double single chip flash capacity. So this was a little over a year ago when they invited me out and I got to walk around their fab and I got to see them making 25 nanometer flash. Before then, everybody was referring to it as 2x nanometer. Nobody knew what the X stood for until that date where they were like, yep, this is it. It's 25. Now, it's another 20 nanometer thing, except this time it's actually 20, as in 20. So they managed to shave another 5 nanometers off of the process. What this ends up doing is you take the standard size of a die that used to hold 8 gigabytes of data on it. Now that same die can hold 16 gigabytes of data on it. 128 gigabit. So when you consider that they stack these things inside of the package, 2 or 4 high, you're going to see higher capacity solid state coming later on. It's going to take a while before this trickles down into SSDs because Intel always waits a few months before they start doing any kind of shipping with ratings that are suitable for like a consumer grade solid state device sort of thing, right? The way their process works is, they get it to a certain new process node is 20 nanometer, and then they sell, they'll sell initial stuff to devices that aren't really going to do as much writing to that memory. Basically they derate it a little bit more. But once they get all their ducks in a row on the process and get it really refined well, they've been pretty good about getting the reliability very close on average to what the previous generation was, even though you would think that the cycles and all these cells are much smaller, everything is much smaller, and it's something that actually does burn out eventually. They've been pretty good about keeping those numbers, within the same kind of a spec. So you're going to see that same kind of lifetime out of a solid state drive, even with something like this in it, somewhere down the road.
But because, you got so many more cells in there, they're less likely to be used. And so the amount of cycles is not as significant as it used to be.
That's exactly it. Because the device is really not just the one chip that's the factor there. It's just the fact that the devices are just having more of them in it and having a higher capacity overall and being cheaper at those higher capacities, right? So if you get a 60 gig solid state drive, that's the same exact kind of make as a 120 gig solid state drive. On average, or your typical thing, the 120 gig is going to last twice as long before it burns out if you were doing the same exact stuff with both. Just because there's twice as much there, and it does wear leveling, and it evens out those writes to all the, to all that flash memory that's available, that storage pool. So this is just another link in the chain, right? It's just keeps getting better and better. It's good to see that they're doing this. It's actually a ONFI 3.0 standard, which means that each package, realize there's usually at least 4 or 8 channels of these, worth of these in a solid state drive. Each package can do, let's see, what's the rating on this? 333 mega transfers per second, which ends up being, I think it basically just translates straight over to like megabytes per second with the way that works.
Isn't it
If it's
about
doing a
half of
sequential.
that? The maximum like 180 some megabytes or 160 some megabytes per second.
Well, I think Onfi 2 could actually do 200 already.
Well, that's
So
sort
I'm
of the
pretty,
argument, though, is OnFi 3 is supposed to be minimum speed of 400 megatransfers. This one's just hitting 333.
right. Again,
So
because that's
they
the
meet the
beginning.
standard, but they don't meet sort of the implied speed minimum.
Well, realize, guys, the standards have multiple speed grades to them. Like you
True.
can tell the chips to do transfers at the different speeds, right? For example, you can tell the newest flash memory to transfer at, I believe, even like the most original legacy style transfer. So that if you paired it with a controller, for example, that couldn't talk that fast, right? Then it would still be able to communicate. Um, but yeah, it is like a speed grade thing. If you're able to swim your way through one of the Intel white papers or the ONFI standards, actually, um, they're good reads if you want to sleep very quickly, because they're just pure data. Here you go. Here's all the different specs for everything, and they don't really explain much either. But yeah, there's different grades of speed and different transfers, different specs. They actually point out asynchronous versus synchronous transfers as well, and that affects the speed as well. As we can tell from drives, like differences between the OCZ agility versus the OCZ vertex. That's the difference between the two, asynchronous versus synchronous. But yeah, it's good to see this out. We saw the same kind of thing when 25 nanometer came out, and eventually that made its way into like the 320 series Intel drives. So we know it's eventually going to hit the market. It's just a matter of it's just got to work its way out there, right?
You are correct.
Yep. Next up, Marble Madness minus benchmarks. New mobile GPUs from AMD and NVIDIA. What's this Marble talk all about?
Hey, Jeremy.
Well,
Jeremy.
yeah.
Yo, dog. I heard you like rebrands. So I
I
rebranded
love
your
rebrands,
previous
NVIDIA.
rebrand.
Thank you. You've brought us another one. You've taken the same old chip that we've all come to know and either love or hate, but you scrape the serial numbers off of it and you put whole new numbers on it, and they make even less sense than the last ones. It's so awesome. So coming up, we've got the GT635M, which we all know as the GT555M. We've got the GT630M, which we've met as the GT540M. And even better, we've got the GeForce 610M, which we all knew as GeForce 520MX. These are the same chips, with perhaps a slight difference on the 635 about memory bus band or memory bandwidth, but chances are that's actually not going to pan out to be true. It's a theoretical situation where it could actually reach, but NVIDIA's released a whole slew of new mobile chips, which you'll be seeing quite frequently on NVIDIA-powered motherboards that will begin mobile platforms. Unfortunately, the same ones you've seen for quite a while now. It's not new silicon. It's GF 106, 108, and 119. On the other hand, if you thought that was disappointing, AMD has released the 7000 series for the mobile, and it's not Southern Islands. Sorry, guys, it's Caicos and Turks. It's probably improved. We don't actually have the full specs yet. And as far as the actual physicality of it, for processors, texture units, they're going to be the same. Memory bus width is, again, not going to change. But chances are it's going to be a little faster. Chances are it's going to be a little bit nicer. And to make it even more confusing, you're going to have these guys, which is it VLI W3, Josh, or VLI W4?
VLI W4.
W4, which will
Yeah,
come
as
in
compared to
DDR3.
graphics core next.
Yeah.
Which
So,
is gonna be
and
the
these guys will be
7900.
DDR3 and DDR4 or DDR5, and then you've got graphics core next, as Josh is saying, which is it is going to come out, right?
Yeah, it's going to come out on Trinity and the high end. Did you say earlier that this stuff? Okay, I got a little ahead of myself. The original HD 5000 series were all VLI W5. These 7000 series that they have listed here are still VLI W5. Now, it wasn't until the HD 6900 series that they went to the little bit more efficient one in terms of graphics processing and DX11 applications with the VLI W4. And, AMD is going to be doing some interesting things here in that they're going to have all three generations in the one HD 7000 series. So graphics core next, the high end. You're going to have some mid-range parts, which will use all VLI W4, and then you've got a lot of these mobile parts and the low-end stuff that's going to be 2 generations ago, VLI W5. If you're confused now, well, you shouldn't be, but still, it's just rebranding.
Yeah. And just wait till Southern Islands hits. You will not know which generation you are buying. It's going to be hard to tell. And it's going to be a lot of work on our part to make sure that it's clear to you which parts you're going to be buying are based on which particular technology. But for right now, if you're buying mobile parts, don't expect a miracle, even if it does say it's HD 7000.
Interesting.
And if you
It
thought
happens
that
like
was
what?
cheerful,
It's like what, every couple of years they like just decide to mix this up like this. It's like we don't have a new line, but here we'll just make it appear that we have one.
Well, part of this is Microsoft's fault. Microsoft and the industry. I mean, if you look at the jump from DirectX 3, DirectX 5, DirectX 6, 7, 8, 9, those happened really rapid fire. And so we have, like the GeForce 2 generation was DirectX 7, the GeForce 3, DirectX 8, GeForce 4, DirectX 8, but then we quickly went into the GeForce 5000 series, which was the first DirectX 9 parts, as well as, AMD ATI with the HD 9800 series and the 9000 series. So yeah, it's been what, 2 years since DirectX 11 was released.
and
we think?
11.1 is not too far away.
No, and so things have gone at a little bit more glacial pace than we had seen previously. I think a lot of that started at DirectX 10. About another year and a half later, we had DirectX 10.1. Another year and a half to 2 years, we finally got DirectX 11. And it's just slowed down a whole lot more. And when you're talking about parts that have 3 billion transistors in them at the top end, that just takes a lot of design cycles to get to working correctly. So
Yeah,
it's going to slow down.
It takes the software time to catch up too, right? Because if that Batman game is any evidence, you turn on DirectX 11 and it does
software
weird
in
things
both
to you,
terms
right?
of drivers and development. So that's true.
Well,
It's
I'm
very
still begging
complex.
for something that's both large address aware and multi-core aware.
Yep.
You might get one, you might get to other, but good luck getting them both together at the same time.
Next up, Ivy Bridge should be here by spring, aka Q3 of 2012. Let's see, who leaked this one? This one was XBit,
Gee,
right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
They leaked out an Intel roadmap. Shows it right there on their map. Hopefully, Intel's pretty good about it. At this point in the game, they're pretty good about, like, if something's on their roadmap and it's this kind of a thing, it usually ends up happening. Right, guys? Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, once it gets to this point, it's getting beyond rumor. So, um,
Well,
now
this
granted,
is
keep in
the
mind, this
second
was
delay.
supposed to, yeah, this was supposed to happen earlier, right? But I
Yeah,
don't know. I
originally
didn't
it was
see a whole
supposed to
lot
be
of,
December, well, this year, right now.
Yeah.
yeah.
But then
Well, it
they
was
took it to
Christmas,
March.
wink, wink.
Yeah, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So
Maybe
one
they'll
month
figure
I
out.
don't think is too bad considering the jump to 22 nanometer, their 3D Tri-Gate technology,
Yeah.
and really no need for anything incredibly faster because none of the competition has anything close to it.
Uh, a coworker recently just picked up was it a 2600K, like an i7, Sandy Bridge part, and with very little tinkering and on air cooling, got it to like 5.6 or 5.8 gigahertz, which is just that's insane, right? So I can't even I cannot wait to see what Tri-Gate CPUs can go to, given all what's supposed to be all the power savings and the switching speed increases, and the like. I'm really hoping that Intel doesn't leave some sort of little Achilles heel in there to sort of put a little chokehold on people from taking them too far and sort of shooting themselves in the foot. Because if everybody gets these things and then they overclock them to 10 gigahertz, like right out the gate, then it's going to be a while before they need to upgrade, right? So
Yeah. But look at the
um,
TDP. The high-end ones are 77 watts.
yeah, yeah. And what's the current high end is what, 120 or 90?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or unless
So
you go
they're going
AMD,
down.
in which case it's a little warmer. But yeah.
Well, AMD, like there's fireballs coming off of the top of the die, but yeah, I mean this is nice, right? This is higher performance. Um, that's good stuff, right? And all this talk, I think years back, where people were like, "Oh, we're never gonna break, micrometers or whatever the heck
The 1 micron, it was a big
or
barrier.
micron, yeah, yeah, it was this big
UV light
barrier. We're
only
never
goes
gonna
so
break."
small.
Yeah, so there was this huge barrier. Oh my God, we can't go any smaller. And now Intel is just like making them 3D. It's like we're not just making the gate anymore and shrinking it. We're just
They went
gonna
all
just
James Cameron over the
yeah, we're just
die.
gonna completely change the shape of it and just like we're just
We
gonna do
are
it.
the gatekeeper.
Pretty much, really. I mean, that's good stuff to be able to do combine that with a die shrink, right? I wasn't expecting them to pull both of them off at the same time.
Hope
Anyhow,
it can do math too.
Yeah, but I think,
yes.
sub 20 nanometer is going to be, and people say this every year, but this year they actually mean it. We're getting into some
Yeah.
interesting
It,
physical properties like
Oh,
quantum entanglement
yep.
and vibration between two electrons that are in two different transistors and they're close together and it just gets messy.
we'll be saying look back to the good old days of electron migration because that was
Yeah.
easy to solve. This
And
is
I think that part of this 22 nanometer thing might be sort of a cheat because if you think about it, the FETs are on their side, right? And they're not measuring it by the width of the channel, the vertical channel, from my understanding, right? So I'm thinking on average, the footprint of all the transistors is going to be 22, but yeah, it could very well, structurally still be slightly higher, higher width to the point where you're not so worried about, hey, this channel's only 50 atoms wide. We might run into some problems here because the same kind of thing
Because
applies
it's
to flash
100
memory.
atoms tall.
yeah,
Yeah, there you
selective
Yeah.
measurement. Proud
go.
tradition.
It's yeah, but flash memory is going to run into the same kind of stuff pretty soon because I mean that's what makes them less reliable or less enduring as you do shrinks on that because the channel where you're storing the voltage for each bit, it's just there's only so many atoms there. There's only so many electrons for you to change the charge of, and it just becomes harder and harder to store that voltage over time. Which is where you run into other things like, well, something we'll talk about in a couple minutes. Um, next up, so everybody can wait on Ivy Bridge. Be happy that you bought your Sandy Bridge for Christmas. You didn't waste your money. You're still good for a few months, right? Chrome has finally surpassed Firefox as the second most usable or most used browser. Not first. It didn't take first place. So this has been coming for a long time, right? It's a pretty steady, slow moving takeover. I'm sure helped along by many commercial efforts by Google. This being one of the first things that Google has started doing advertisements for, my
Android.
understanding. Well, that's that they haven't been pushing that. I think they were pushing Google ads before they were pushing Android ads. Like Google came out with a really sweet, the stop or the really fast camera kind of stuff where they're like shooting the arrow across the thing or the potato gun ad or any of those like those really neat viral Chrome ads that they were doing and show off how fast their browser was. But it's between that and them adding, probably them adding the plugin ability, which is what everybody was crying out for as soon as Chrome came out. Um, of course, for Chrome, they're just called extensions. But I think between all that and just between a lot of word of mouth, people just have been migrating. I've been using it for a long time. I don't use it primary, but I do toggle it pretty much 50-50 with Firefox. So I guess that puts me right on the line for what everybody else is doing on average. What about you guys? What are you using, Jeremy?
IE and Opera for usability, Firefox for most things, and Chrome for when I just want something quick.
Yeah, that's pretty much what
I
I
use
do.
way too many browsers.
Well, I will say this. Chrome is pretty hoggy on the memory if you are the kind of person that has a lot of tabs. There's definitely no doubt there. Like I think I've easily had like a couple of gig of RAM just getting sucked up by Chrome. But then again, you do the same thing with Firefox. It's going to get there eventually. It's the same kind of deal. Um, but
And
Chrome
IE,
is
it's
still,
already there.
yeah, pretty much. You launch IE and you've already used a gig probably. Um, I don't know. I mean, I just find it's pretty darn snappy and it's pretty resilient because it spreads all the tabs over multiple threads. Um, it does a pretty darn good job for me. That's why I shifted. Josh, you?
I guess I need to change to Chrome. I use Firefox primarily, and for some other basic things, I use IE, but that's it. I never tried Safari. My wife accidentally loaded it up once when she updated QuickTime or
Something.
some crap like that, and I
Oh,
quickly removed that as soon as possible.
that's the
Uh,
that was the Apple's sneaky attempt with the Apple software update
Yep.
yes.
where they just like, hey,
I,
you should try this. Take take a hit.
so I said
I like it.
Safari, so goody, and sent it on its way.
Yeah.
Not funny? Not funny at all? Damn it.
Eh,
I liked it.
Thanks. But yeah, I got to try Chrome then. Got to get on it.
yeah, give it a shot. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the only holdup for me really was the extension thing. I had to wait for a couple of the extensions that were just deal breakers for me to get ported over. Once they were there, I was like, give it a shot. Okay, it's good. So you guys that are listening, give it a shot. If you haven't tried it at all, at least it's worth trying for a couple minutes to see if you like it. It is pretty dang fast though. Next up, it's a bit early for 11.2, but how about Catalyst 11.11 Charlie? And I don't use AMD, so you guys are going to have to tell the story on this one.
I can play Skyrim again.
Yay, Skyrim.
It was actually probably the B update that did it for me, but if you do enjoy Crossfire, this will actually enable it in Elder Scrolls, enable it in Elder Scrolls, make it better in Assassin's Creed, and theoretically, you should be able to go back to DX11 in Arkham City. I have yet to see anyone who's actually benchmarked Arkham City with it because everyone that I've seen has done 11B or 11 plain don't enable DX11. But apart from that, hey, I heartily recommend this driver because I could be playing Skyrim right now instead of watching things bounce around. Which was
Pretty
my
good.
experience with
That's
last
pretty
week.
good DX11 impression, Jeremy. Proud of you.
Move.
Proud of you.
Yeah.
Robot move.
I am a robot.
Mm.
Please insert girder.
Next up, memories. Let's see. G Skill memory.
Memories, like a child you left behind. No
In
more
the
Barbara
Ripsaw?
Streisand in this Ripsaw. Yes, the
The
Ripsaw
Ripjaw.
Z's. Ripjaw? Ripjaw. I can't remember. Heck. But
It was a great
anyway,
weekend.
G-Skill. They're releasing these new kits, and they have the 4x8 gigabyte that runs at 2400 megahertz at 1.65 volts. So if you got an i7 platform based on the 2011 socket, you can use two kits of these to run at a massive 64 gigs of memory running at, I believe they had it at 2100 megahertz in that particular configuration. So, Alan, what would you do with 64 gigs of main memory?
I would figure out some way to install the entire OS on that thing. But that's just me.
You can do it.
Just don't turn the power off.
Didn't JJ from Asus show a way to partition off some of your memory, put a 20 gig RAM drive on your X79 platform? Or did you watch any of those videos for Ryan? Click some ads on his site.
Well,
No.
I didn't see those videos, but
Yeah.
what is it? Just using some sort of software solution just to fire up a RAM drive?
Something like that. Partitions off, a chunk of that, large amount of memory. And
Yeah.
you're using anywhere from 12 gigs to, 40, 50 gigs, and
Sure.
having the rest partitioned off into a RAM disk. Of course, the only problem with that is you've got to transfer that information from your hard drive, whether it's SSD or spinning, into the RAM disk to, get it to use like you want, or just leave your computer on all the time
Yeah. That's the
and
catch.
be the bane of Al Gore. But they've released these. They're pretty solid looking. I've used G-Skill stuff a lot. I've had a couple of DIMMs go bad, but their RMA system it's just so easy. You go onto the website, you put in the information, they send you an RMA number, you put that in the mail, a week later you get your return DIMMs via ground, and it's all free. So I didn't mind that one bit, even though I had two sets of DIMMs out of, I'd say, 20 that I had bought for my work, went out. And so it's just been, memory goes bad. That's something you're just going to have to deal with. I mean, these ICs, they may pass the first test, but once you start using them, you're going to have some electromigration. You're going to have other issues going on, and stuff's going to go bad. So, I think G-Skill does just as well as anybody else. Their RMA process was painless, and they're really willing to push the envelope of where they're pushing memory. So you've got these, huge densities, huge tracts of land, and
Yes.
they run very, very fast. So it's not going to be a bottleneck for these modern processors. They work for AMD platforms as well, but you're limited to 4 DIMMs as compared to the X79, which you could have 8 of them running for a max of 64 gigs of fast memory. They should be out now.
Sweet. And with that, we move on to hardware and software picks of the week. I'm just going to let Jeremy speak on behalf of Ryan for this one.
Oh, I think I have, so we'll just skip him.
Oh, okay, good. So then on to your pick.
Well, you've all heard of physical computing. It's been trademarked as DLNA or Universal Plug and Play. It's the idea that, you can have something that's controllable over the internet that actually physically interfacing with something in your own home. Well, over at Hackaday, somebody put together something they're calling Twine, which is a little device, little board, which is protected, as you can see, by gel, which has Wi-Fi, an accelerometer, and a temperature sensor in it. Thus meaning it can pretty much get everything that you need, either by weight or by movement, be it, somebody at your door, somebody knocking at your door, the milk is running low at home, and it's open source. So, as long as you get a Wi-Fi signal at home, and maybe the fridge might be a little difficult to broadcast from, but I'm sure you can run a little wire out of it. It's takes away all of the, hey, you've got to solder together an Arduino board and learn how to program. This thing is going to be able to sense it. It's got I won't call it a simple interface, but if these guys actually get this going, it's going to be a really easy way for anyone just to be able to pick something up, grab a nice little web interface, program it, and as you can see, it's not just on the PC, it's on your phone as well. And just grab anything movement-based or weight-based. How can this be a bad thing? Just think of how many useless hours you could spend learning how much weight you lost when you get off the toilet.
You know what? You know what the best thing about all this stuff is? We don't have to depend on our own minds to remind us of anything.
Anything.
Do I need
Ever
milk?
again.
I don't know. Do I? Well, let me look at my phone thing. Did I pick the children up today?
What I like is that it's on Kickstarter, which actually
Well-
there's been a few pretty good things on Kickstarter lately.
But take a look of it. It's $198,730 pledged of the $35,000 goal.
Yep. There was,
I have a feeling this is going to take off.
just this past week, there was like a silicone overlay iPad keyboard thing that came out, also on Kickstarter, and their goal was like 10 grand, and they already have like over 100 grand or something like that. Crazy. And the big deal where there was like, things coming out within like a couple of weeks. Like we'll probably see them at CES. I would imagine they'll have a booth. That'll be pretty
yeah.
cool. Even though I don't even have an iPad, but it was an interesting thing. It was just a silicone overlay. You felt like you were typing on a keyboard, where it was actually just the iPad screen. One of the gripes that some people have, that hey, it's just a piece of glass. It doesn't feel like a keyboard, and that just like fixed it, solved the problem. It's like, oh,
All I can
Without
say is,
even
in
duct
case this
tape.
thing,
There, I fixed it.
slap
yeah.
a temperature sensor in there. That's it. You are
That's it.
brilliant.
Josh, what do you got?
You know what? It's time to treat yourself. It's Christmas or the holiday season or Kwanzaa or whatever you want to talk about. Get a video card. Right now, we see a special on Newegg of a Sapphire HD 6870. Comes with a free copy of Dirt 3. Still a good game. And for $139 after rebate? That's dirt cheap for a still very, very fast card. So be happy, get plenty of outputs. It's a nice, cool running card. Dirt 3, you can race against people like myself and maybe Jeremy or maybe Ryan if he has time away from the hookers and narcotics.
That it?
That's it.
Had to slip in the jab towards Ryan. All right, so my pick.
You
know
picked
how I
Real
always-
Player One.
No.
Somebody else remembers
Real
that.
players.
That-
No. Did you notice how my voice sunk as it registered and I said the second no? Never. So this is sort of remotely a software pick of the week, mainly because it's like, well, you need software to play it. I'm going to recommend the audio version of a book, Ready Player One. So if anybody has not, if you're listening to this podcast and you have not either read or listened to Ready Player One and you grew up through the 80s, you need to do this right now. That's all I'm going to say. Because it'll just take you on this nostalgic trip that's really cool. And the reader of the audiobook version is Will Wheaton, just to cap it off. So he does pretty good at that kind of thing. It's like the best guy for the job, hands down. So, yeah, it's good
At least I
stuff.
don't have to look at him.
No,
I don't want to look at him anymore.
you don't have to. You just listen. No, but it's good. I'm like a quarter way through it. It's pretty dang good. So yeah, do that.
Do that.
Do that. And with that, we didn't have any emails, nothing, guys? No papers?
No papers that Ryan has giving us with.
Ah,
Yeah, he won't give us the code to be able to
Is he-
access the voicemail, so all we can do is depend on him.
well, because that's stuff that happens overseas with them hacking in other people's voicemails and stuff. He just doesn't want that happening over here with us. Josh will be leaving him little presents. Josh, you should just call into the voicemail and just leave Ryan like love messages.
Love
About papers.
messages.
We should all just conference into it after the podcast and just
It's a good idea.
just leave like a long thing. Anyhow, with that, one final repeat of all of our relevant info. The phone number to leave us those voicemails that nobody's sending us. You should just do that. Entertain Ryan. He wants to listen to something. He won't let us listen to him, but yeah, do it. 1-888-38-PC-PER. Or you can email us at podcast@pcper.com. The Twitter feeds are /Ryan Shrout or /PCPer, or at for either one of those as well. And that's all she wrote. With that, I'm Al Malventano.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
Thanks for listening.